Simple steps raster and simulated process color separations. This session we're going to get into separations and halftones. We're going to be working with Simple Steps Raster and also Simple Steps Smart Rip 4.0, which is really our sister application. That application does our halftone ripping. It works with our vector graphics with spot colors. It has a lot of color management features built into it and things like that. And you can actually check that out on our website, advancedtshirts.com, and under video tutorials here you can find Simple Steps Smart Rip. We'll be working with interlocking halftones in this session, a feature that is unique to the Simple Steps product. You won't find that in any other ripping applications available in the market. We'll also be taking a look at dot gain briefly, something else you want to be aware of, and there's videos covering all of that here on our website. Go ahead and take a look at a graphic here. I've got the Mortal Kombat logo set up here in CorelDRAW for demonstrative purposes. We won't be printing this, but we'll be color separating it and halftone ripping it. So the first thing I want to do to get started is do some analysis here. Now, we did some other videos previously, and you can review those relating to understanding the color process and doing analysis of your colors before you do your color separations with Simple Steps Raster. I'll go ahead and select this, and I'm going to go ahead and open up my Simple Steps Raster here. First thing I want to do is go to my Click Steps tab. Go ahead and turn all this off here. And before I do anything, I usually like to make sure I've got everything deselected and turned off just so I don't process anything by accident. I'm just going to do a standard pull of my hue range or my color range. You want to take a look and see, what color components or what colors are in this graphic or image before we separate it. So I'll go ahead and click on that, and we'll let that process. Go ahead and minimize this, and we'll zoom out. Go ahead and grab this. We'll just copy this. We'll go back to our original page here, or our original document. We'll take a look at this now. We can look at our color components, knowing that we've got 360 degrees of hue or color to deal with. Hue or color components. Looking at this, we can see that all of our color is down here between the red and the yellow. So let's look at red, yellow, and orange here. Now, if I want to verify that, and sometimes what I'll do, because you might not, sometimes when you see a red, you might have a magenta in there. And if you do the separation, you don't see all the color, then you probably had a magenta in there. Because if you look at the color down here, you can see that magenta can be very close to red here where the rose is. So typically what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of analysis with the color docker in Corel. Come over here and open that up. Now, if you need to get to that, you can go to Window, Dockers, and Color here, and that'll open that up for you. But I can take my eyedropper here and just kind of see what's going on. Is this a magenta or a red? Now, looking at the RGB, it's very hard to tell what color that is. But if I go ahead and click on that, that'll give me an RGB reading. I come over here to the color docker, go down to HSB, and I can see this is a 14, which would be here between the 0 and the 30 in the 360 degrees of color that are in the visible light or color spectrum. And of course, we work with adding black and white. I can come over here and just click in here. That's RGB. Take this to HSB, and once again, I can see this is 2, which should be right here next to 0 on red. So I know we've got red in here. Obviously, we've got yellow. Come and click here. Go from the RGB, change to the HSB. This is at 55. Yellow's at 60. That's very close. Then, of course, we've got some orange in here. I click on that, change to the HSB. You see I can identify the numerical values. 37, orange is at 30 here. And these numerical values for the hue or color components are identical here, that you can see, to what we'll be working with in our splits or divisions with Simple Steps Raster. So you can see that we've got very intelligently divided color based on what's happening in the real science of color and the visible light or color spectrum. Now, looking at this image, I've got a couple of different options. I can see that I've definitely got red, orange, and yellow in the image. Now the question is, do I want to simulate the orange with halftones, or do I want to print it as an orange? Now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and simulate it as a 6 color, and we'll create our orange from a blend of the red and yellow. And also I want to use that to demonstrate the difference between interlocking halftones and just printing straight flamenco, which is going to give you problems with your color blends. Also, I know that I'm going to have an underbase, and I'll go ahead and choke that, a highlight white and a black. if I'm going to print on a darker colored garment. Now if I was going to print on a white garment, I would just need the black and I wouldn't need the underbase and the white highlight. Underbase and white highlight, so as if you're printing on, say, a dark maroon t-shirt, you lay down white ink on the t-shirt and you cure that or flash that and then print your inks on top of that, so it's like you're printing on a white even though you're on a colored garment. All this set up, I'll go ahead here and I'll select my graphic and I'll just click on Quick Steps and we'll go ahead and process our color separations. Once my separations are finished processing, I'll go ahead and minimize Simple Steps. We'll go ahead and zoom out and take a look at the results we've got here. Now if you want to preview this so you can really get a good idea of what it's going to look like, you can come over here to your Object Manager. I'll go ahead and select this. And I'm going to ungroup everything here. And we can see we've got our black, which is right here, and then we've got our hue underneath that. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Z here. I'm going to change these red and yellows transparency to subtract. And you can see that. Now that's really the best preview is when you look at subtract. Now when I separate these, I'm going to change back to overprint so that they separate correctly. Overprinting actually tells the CorelDRAW that it's just going to print directly on top of it. You're not really going to separate the colors. They're not going to affect each other in the separation process. I'll do the same with the black and change this to subtract. And you can see that preview there. Now I can go ahead and take this, hit Control C to copy it. I'll go back here to my original graphic. I'll go ahead and delete this, or we can keep this just so we can preview it. Paste in. I'll bring this over next to the original and I can see that my color separations are identical, and if I move the black over, I can see that also my hue or my color components are identical in my color separation, so I'm really good to go here. And I'll go ahead and go back to the original separation here. At this point what I'll do is I'll go ahead and set this up for halftone ripping. I'll bring this down to my page and I'll change my page size to 13.0 to 19.0, which is your typical or a very common output size for your large format printers. Now I'm going to start working with Simple Steps Smart Rip at this point in time, because now all of my bitmap objects have spot color support built into them, so we can work with them like they're spot color objects in CorelDRAW. I also want to go here and take this transparency off, change that back to normal. I'll do the same thing here, back to normal, and back to normal. Next thing I'll do is I'll select in my Object Manager my red through my black, right click and make sure all these are set to overprint outline. They are. I'm going to turn that off and I'll just make sure overprint. Now you can also view this as overprint as simulate overprints, and you can see how that changes that. Now I'm ready to do some ripping and halftone setup here, so I'll go to my Advanced Tools Docker from advancedtshirts.com, and I'll go ahead and what I'll do is I'll open my Simple Steps raster, but my Simple Steps 4. Now this is a product from advancedtshirts.com, and like I said, kind of like the sister to the Simple Steps raster. And that's actually got a video series that covers everything here on our Advanced T-Shirts website. Under video tutorials, you can take a look at Simple Steps Smart Rip. Now here we get into dot gain, and that's very important for your simulated process printing, also your interlocking and everything else that Simple Steps Smart Rip does. Go ahead and go back to CorelDRAW here. Go ahead and select this. Now we're going to have to change everything to Pantone colors or spot colors in CorelDRAW. Right now they're set up as HSB or RGB colors, and they're not recognized as spot colors. So we'll go ahead and create selection palette here. Click off, click on, select all. Now what I'm going to do is just convert everything one click to spot colors. And I'll select OK. Now you'll notice that this changes. The Pantone color renders a little bit differently. It's kind of like a simulated rendering in the computer of Pantone spot color printing. Once that's set, I can now go to the Separations tab. Now here I can go for my halftone conversion or my ripping. Dot gain, very important. Please review the video relating to that under the Simple Steps Smart Rip 4 videos that we just covered at the advancedtshirts.com website. If you have dot gain, very bad dot gain, in your simulated process printing, then your printing can come out, your colors can be wrong. You know, if these dots are expanding in the black, you're going to get a lot more black in the print, and that's not what you want. Now we have easy testing. There's actually a test available with this that you can do a test and set up your dot gain with. Normally I'd go with a minimum of 1.75 or 2.0, sometimes even higher depending how things work in your shop. Now I won't set that up for this separation just so we can accurate preview. Set my dot type to round. I'm going to be ripping at 1800 DPI. Got some options here. Some of the older printers, they don't handle the high resolution so well if you've got an older computer, etc. So we're set to halftones here. I'm going to go with a white base. That's going to be tinted. I'm going to choke that again just to give myself a little bit more room to work with. I'm going to set that to interlock, and I'm going to do the same thing for my white highlight because I want my black and my white highlight and my white base to interlock with each other. And I'll cover the interlocking here after we get done ripping. I'm going to change this angle to 67 or a 45-degree offset for the white highlight and also for the black. Now this is kind of like a hybrid of rosette and flamenco that we're working with here. Now you're going to see where I'm going with this. Here I'm going to take my yellow and that I'm going to interlock, but I'm not going to change the angle. I'm going to leave that at 22. The red's not going to be interlocked. Now you can see all these settings we have here. I mean, features for halftone ripping and color separations. We've got spreading, choking, gutters, traps, everything's built into this application so that it really does anything and everything that you would want to do or could need to do as a screen printer. If you're going with all black output, you can select that down here at the bottom. But basically here now we're ready to rip. So go ahead and click on Generate Separations and we'll let that process. Once Simple Step Smart Rip 4.0 has finished processing our halftone color separations, I'll actually have a live halftone preview in Corel Draw. This is something else that you won't find in any of the RIP softwares. The ability to get a halftone preview of your simulated process or any other printing that you're doing before you print your films and get out on press. Now the halftone preview doesn't render very well directly here in Corel Draw because these are hard edge monochrome bitmaps without any anti-aliasing. If you want to get a better idea of how our graphics is actually going to look when we print it, you can actually go through here to our object manager. Here's our black. We'll right click and change that to an RGB black, and you can see that's affecting our color. Go ahead and get our red here, which would be your Pantone 1788C. Right click, not left click, and change that to a red because it's a monochrome bitmap. If I left click, I'm going to change the background color. And if I do that, I can make that transparent again. Just come up here to an X in your color palette, and that'll take care of that. I'll select my 3945C Pantone. That's my red, and I'll right click on that also. Next thing you do is just go ahead and select everything. Go to bitmaps, convert to bitmap, 300 DPI. You don't need anti-aliasing. Leave yourself a transparent background if you like. That doesn't really matter. Select OK. Let that process. You can see that Corel renders that much better. If you want to get an even more accurate preview, you can by just going to bitmap, blur, and Gaussian blur, about 1 pixel or so, and this really simulates what you're going to see on press. Now, of course, you want to compare this to our original. So I'll come back over here and we can paste this in, and we'll bring this over and take a look at it next to the original, and we can see that we're going to get a great print, as you can see there. Now I'll go ahead and we'll go back to our group here. I'll hit Control Z and we'll go back to the halftone preview. I want to take a look at the underbase. Now remember, we did that as interlocking halftones. And you can see it looks like the halftones are inverted. And the reason that we did that is because we don't want our black printing on top of our white. I'll go ahead and copy this and you'll see what I mean. Come back here to the underbase and paste this in. Left click to make that background transparent, and you can see what's going on here. And these halftones, now that they're interlocked, will do the job of blocking out the color of the garment between the black and the white, as opposed to printing dot on top of dot or flamenco working with interlocking. Now here I've set up one that I separated with flamenco, which is typically what's recommended in the industry. And if we take a look at flamenco, for example, printing on the red or the yellow to the red, let me go ahead and take this. This is my yellow. I'll right click and change that to yellow, and I'll left click and make that background transparent. I'll copy this, go back to the red, right click and change that to a red. Now imagine if I was printing this press and I printed these halftones of the red and then I printed the yellow on top of that, and you can see that I hit Control Z there, you can see that I'm printing directly on top of that red. Now, working with the high opacity inks that we work with these days in screen printing, that's really going to affect what? The orange. So when you see a lot of the simulated processing going on saying, well, we need 12 colors, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're printing flamenco. So they really need to print that orange because they couldn't simulate it effectively, listening to the recommendation of a lot of the vendors and the providers of other separation and halftone solutions going flamenco, same angle, dot on dot. You end up having to print a lot more colors to get all of your colors and blends correct, because that will definitely affect your print when you print that yellow directly on top of that orange. And we can actually see that here in the actual rendering of the sample here with Flamingo. Convert to bitmap, okay, process. And you'll see this just not quite as rich, it's off. The colors don't look correct, they're not blending correctly. So we'll go back here and we'll take a look at that here. And we'll go here to our halftone preview, and we can see here we've got interlocking going on, and our print is going to actually simulate the color, or continuous tone simulation, far more effectively working with the interlocking, because here again, if I go through to, this is my red, we'll right click and change that to a red, and then we'll go one more here page and we'll get the yellow, right click and change that to a yellow, give that a transparent background, copy that, go back one page here, paste that in. Now remember, this got all knocked out before, but when we paste this in, you can see it doesn't get knocked out, and you can see how those dots are printing right into each other like the pieces of a puzzle. And that's your interlocking, which is really critical for your simulated process printing, especially for those of you dealing with the 4 and 6 color presses, because you really can't do that flamenco and print, red, orange, and yellow. And you can simulate this just as well, because the human eye, when it looks at that, it's going to see orange even though there's no orange in the actual image, such as we have here in the halftone preview. Bitmaps, convert to bitmaps one more time. And then we'll go ahead and blur this again. Bitmaps, blur and Gaussian blur, 1 pixel, select OK. And there's your preview. So you can see it's very important how we set up our color separations. We understand how to work with our color components in Simple Steps Raster. And once again, there's some other videos on the site that explain this, how these color components work and how to use them and how to do your color analysis. Set up your color separations, do your halftone ripping with Simple Steps Smart Rip 4.0, your interlocking halftones and all of them. You've got, just about every feature and function you can imagine built into this: trapping, choking, spreading, gutters, etc. So go ahead and wrap here, and we'll see you in our next video.